This country's got a fever, and the only prescription it writes is a piece of cold, hard steel. They call it protection. They call it freedom, but I've seen the bodies. In 2023 alone, there were 46,728 of them. That's an average of one death every 11 minutes, and I'm here to tell you, they're selling a disease and calling it the cure. This isn't another political shouting match. This is a Noir investigation. We're heading deep into the shadows of the American psyche to uncover the twisted relationship between violence and fear that fuels this nation's deadly obsession. We're looking for the truth, buried under a mountain of myth and a river of blood. The case file is thick and the witnesses are long dead. But they're ghosts. They still walk these streets. Every good investigation starts at the beginning, the original sin. For America, that means the frontier. The story they sell you is a romance written in gunpowder. The lone hero with a rifle in his hand, taming a wild land. It's a powerful myth, the idea that all a man needed was his will, his wits, and a weapon to carve out a life. This is where the story of the gun as a necessity begins, a tool for hunting, for survival, for defense against a hostile world. It's an idea that links survival and virtue to the individual holding the gun. This mythology of the Wild West romanticizes guns, outlaws, and rugged individualism. But like most stories told in the dark, it's full of holes. The real frontier towns, places like Tombstone and Dodge City, often had strict gun control laws. Visitors were met with signs demanding they check their firearms. The truth is, the myth of the gunslinger was better for business than the reality. It sold dime novels and later movie tickets. Most importantly, it started selling an identity. An identity that was about to be supercharged by war. Before the Civil War, guns were mostly just tools, often artisanal, unreliable things. The war changed everything. It was the birth of modern, industrial-scale violence. Gunmakers who once produced firearms like craftsmen were now running factories, churning out weapons for the Union and Confederate armies. This wasn't about putting food on the table anymore. This was about killing, efficiently and from a distance. When the war ended, America was the most heavily armed society in the world. Gunmakers, sitting on massive surpluses, needed new customers. So they marketed a feeling. They sold sturdy manliness to fathers for their sons. And in the smoldering ruins of the South, a new potent narrative took root. White Southerners facing a world turned upside down were told that private firearm ownership was the only way to protect their way of life from a government they no longer trusted. The gun was no longer just a tool for survival. It became a tool for maintaining a social hierarchy and protecting status in the face of seismic change. Research even shows that the historical prevalence of slavery in a county predicts how common firearm ownership is today. The ghost of that conflict still haunts the nation, its phantom limbs reaching into the present, shaping who owns a gun and why. The 20th century just kept pouring fuel on the fire. 2 world wars, Korea, Vietnam, each conflict sent men home trained in violence and advanced the technology of killing. But the real shift happened back home, on the streets, and in our living rooms. The rise of mass media created a new kind of fear. Newspapers and television started broadcasting a steady diet of urban crime narratives. The world, once vast and distant, now felt like it was closing in. The city became a place of shadows and unseen threats. It brewed a special kind of paranoia. The belief that danger lurks around every corner and that the people in charge are either unwilling or unable to help. You're on your own. This fear became a potent selling point. By the late 20th century, the primary reason people gave for owning a gun had shifted. It wasn't for hunting or recreation anymore. For the first time, the main driver was self-defense. Protection against other people. A nation obsessed with safety was now saturated with the very tools of violence. The stage was set for our main suspect to take over the case. In any good noir, you follow the money and the motive. In this case, the motive is fear. Fear is the ultimate femme fatale. Seductive, manipulative. She whispers in your ear that you're alone, that no one is coming to save you. And she has accomplices. Political rhetoric, 24-hour news cycles, and savvy marketing all work together, personifying fear and selling one simple, elegant solution, the gun. They feed a psychological loop. This shared culture of fear leads to what researchers call motivated reasoning. It causes people to overestimate the protective benefits of gun ownership while dismissing the very real risks. It has the same psychology that sells lottery tickets, a belief in a long-shot payoff against overwhelming odds. The data shows that a gun in the home, far from being a talisman against danger, actually makes that home less safe, dramatically increasing the likelihood of death by homicide or suicide. But fear doesn't listen to facts. It listens to the story that makes it feel powerful. And the story being sold is that with a gun, you are the one in control. This leads us to the modern gun owner, and here the case gets complicated. Because they aren't the villain of this story. In many ways, they're the classic noir protagonist, a complex character trapped by circumstance and driven by a desperate need for control in a world that feels chaotic and threatening. For many, especially those facing economic distress or a loss of social standing, the gun becomes a symbol. It's a way to reclaim a sense of individual power, masculinity, and moral certainty. It's a physical badge of identity and belonging to a valued social group. Gun ownership becomes a statement, a declaration that you are a law-abiding citizen, a patriot, in a world that seems to be falling apart. Debates over gun rights are no longer about policy. They are perceived as attacks on personal identity and autonomy. The gun owner becomes the last honest man in a corrupt city, holding the line with a piece of steel, convinced he's the hero of his own story. So, where does that leave us? We've followed the trail from the frontier, through the blood of the Civil War, and into the anxious heart of modern America. We've seen the suspects, the myth-makers, the war profiteers, the merchants of fear, and the revelation is the trap itself. The perfect, brutal irony of a classic noir. The gun, sold as the ultimate answer to a world defined by fear, has become a primary driver of the violence that creates that very fear. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Fear of violence leads to more guns, and more guns create a society where violence becomes more common and more lethal. The supposed lifeboat is what's keeping the storm alive. We are a nation with more civilian-owned guns than people, a complete outlier among developed nations. And while early data from 2024 and 2025 suggests a welcome decline in gun homicides from the pandemic, record highs, the cycle's underlying machinery remains untouched. In fact, gun suicides, which make up the majority of all gun deaths, reached an all-time high in 2023. The investigation is over, but the case is never closed. Because in this city, the shadows have a life of their own, and the fever has yet to break. This case has 1,000 angles, and every clue leads down another dark alley. The story is never as simple as they want you to believe. If you've been following a different lead, or have a piece of evidence you think I've missed, drop it in the comments below. In an investigation this deep, every clue helps. And if you want to keep digging into the cases everyone else is too afraid to touch, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell.